System Sacom was a Japanese PC game studio, and their bread and butter for about the first 10 years of their existence was a whole lot of stuff you've never heard of. Ranging from ultra-obscure MSX platformers to actually somewhat significant PC-98 adventure games, but not the ones that are likely to command much attention from the English side of things these days. It was 1993 when they showed their true form. With the advent of CD-based gaming, they were one of the earlier studios to jump on, making their proper debut with 1993's horror-adventure game, The Mansion of Hidden Souls, and 1994's completely inexplicable 3DO dungeon crawler, Seal of the Pharaoh. This turn is what would come to truly define System Sacom's legacy, most of their games from this point forward taking on this interactive movie approach, often mystery-themed games with some particularly quirky and unusual sense of tone or presentation. Rampo, RMJ, The Mystery Hospital, and of course, probably their most famous game among modern-day online crowds, Lunacy. What we're interested in today is a game that sits in a truly bizarre space between all of these. Hot off the heels of Lunacy came System Sacom's utterly surreal, tonally bizarre, fantasy historical-based, space-time detective mystery game, Jiku Tante DD Dracula Detective Maboroshi no Lorelei. Or Space-Time Detective DD Dracula Detective... Okay, this is one of these subtitles that gets a bit weird. The first translation that might come to mind is like Lorelei of the Phantom, or The Lorelei Apparition, or The Fleeting Lorelei, The Mythical Lorelei. You get the idea. The Lorelei is big, and it is freaky. Anyway, I don't even know where to start with this one. Dracula Detective opens in the year 2238. Our boy, the Drac Deck himself, Narukami Raizo, chilling out and watching the news about the latest in time crimes, his feet planted smack on his desk. Take a moment to appreciate the game's stunning facial animation, in which they inexplicably left in this bizarre twitch following every single line of dialogue. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. I have no idea why they're doing this. Conspicuously, the news mentions a power surge at some kind of lab facility. Wonder if this could end up being important. As a space-time detective, Raizo describes himself as a necessary force in the investigation and combating of space-time dimensional crimes.
だから俺たちみたいな探偵が必要なのさ。狼の組織じゃ法に縛られていつもゴテゴテだろ。
Just as he's hanging back and thinking about how little work's coming in, his assistant, Kirihime Iceman, barges in, clad in swimsuit, to do the most insane dance I've seen in my life.
Wright-chan?
海に行こうったって外は紫外線の嵐だぞ。日焼けどころの騒ぎじゃない。この子は桐姫愛さん。俺の仕事のパートナーって感じかな。
Interrupting their comedy routine, a young woman by the name of Reni Raval, a student of the Roseanne Academy for the Genetically Gifted, comes in with a job. 1 month ago, her father vanished, leaving behind an ominous letter and a music box playing a song called Lorelei.
このオルゴールはお前の母さんと私の思い出の曲なんだ。気に入ってもらえただろうか。突然だが、私はしばらく旅に出ることになるだろう。結局、一度も一緒に祝ってあげられなかった。戻りはいつになるのかは私にもわからない。すべては私が悪かったのだから。
Within the music box, the three find a hidden compartment containing a floppy disk and a bank card. Examining the floppy disk, Raizo and Hime are surprised to learn that Reni's missing father is Professor Colt Raval, a famous scientist and inventor. Buried in the floppy disk are the schematics and time travel coordinates for some mysterious machine. The pair of detectives hesitate to accept a job this fishy for a moment, but ultimately they need the cash. Finally, we head down to see Raizo's personal time travel vehicle.
これが俺たちの時空航行機。通称タイムライドって呼ばれている。
ずいぶん大きなものなんですね。
ま、このクラスにしては出力が大きくて安定した。
これは
夏休みって暇だからちょっとカラーリングに凝ってみたけど、ゾウさんもついてんだよ。ほら、喜んでる喜んでる。さてと、ライゾーちゃん、ケンちゃん綺麗でっちゅね。あらライゾーちゃん、お口から牙が出てまちゅよ。図星だったわね。仕事だってこと忘れないでね。
恥ずかしいところをお見せした。もう一つ説明しておこう。実は俺、鳴神雷蔵は吸血鬼なのだ。通称 DD、 つまりはドラキュラ・デイテクティブと呼ばれるのもそのせいだったりする。特殊遺伝子保護法によって人権は守られているが、やはり世を忍んでおいた方が安全なのも事実だ。
And so we begin our time trip, flying back to the listed date of those time travel coordinates, the year 1939. It looks like Raizo's crew is being followed by two shady figures, though. After arriving in our destination time, the three dispatch search drones to scout the area and debate on where to land their ship, deciding on Germany with the excuse that
この時代のあの国なら何が飛んでたってドイツ軍の秘密兵器になっちゃうわよ。
while they're in the area, Raizo decides to stop by a pub and
注文はトマトあるかい？ほらよ。
grab a tomato in the local newspaper. The newspaper holds a startling discovery, announcing the launch of a new advanced blimp captained by Erhard Jiangwei, funded by bagholder Richard Strasser, and developed by Colt Raval. This blimp's name? The Lorelei. Raizo decides to use a contact to sneak him and Rennie on board the launch and the guy's reporter in training, hilariously chaining Yume up on the ship to keep her from coming with.
遊びじゃないんだから時間が来たらほどけるよ。
ライゾー、覚えてろよ。
And finally, the investigation begins. Switch to Disc 2. Yeah, Disc 1 is entirely just the opening and ending cutscenes. All the actual game is on Disc 2. Early Japanese FMV adventure games, man. On arriving at the Lorelei, Raizo sees Rennie off to her room, the first one on the guest floor, leaving us to manually walk over to our own, room 3. The game introduces its, mechanics? Design? Here? If you've ever played Lunacy, expect the same stuff, except even shallower somehow. When Raizo arrives at his room, he gets a call on his little future videophone thing from Yume.
ライゾー、よくもやってくれたわね。一生忘れないから。この仕事が終わったらどうしてくれようか。
Who explains some of our options. First off, the videophone itself. Whenever we start getting a ring on it, Raizo's gotta head back to his room to answer. We can also use it to save, but again, only in room 3. Don't want to break anyone's 20th century brains with our future tech. Besides that, there's the rest of the item menu, which you'd think would be a bigger thing, but I can't think of many games where items are less important than DD, actually. Like you're mostly using this as another step to accessing the save menu. You don't get many other important items. Second up is our vampire powers. There's a whole dedicated menu for this, which conveniently lists out the rules for you whenever you open it. Raizo's got an energy meter, and according to the game, it must be over 50% for his powers to be used. A single use spends 50%, so maxed out, you'll get about 2 uses. If you were curious why he was eating that tomato earlier, it's because tomatoes and tomato juice are the main restorative items for this. You can use these powers to view the past and exhibit feats of physical strength. Apparently. Okay, so the truth is I'm pretty sure the game is lying about most of this, because there are only 2 scripted moments where you use these powers, and it's impossible to get enough tomatoes or juice to fill the meter up beyond 40% until then. There's also a hint option on the pause menu. I don't know what this really does. There's no immediate response to selecting it, and Raizo usually just gives hints automatically when you walk around enough.
ダメでもともともう一度船長に頼んでみよう。
As for the Lorelei itself, it's a pretty puny space, all things considered. You'll spend half the game stuck on the guest hall, the lower floor is inaccessible, and that's just about all there is. The only place to really go is the lounge, which is where everyone's gathering, so Raizo might as well stop by and say hello. In the lounge, we meet the rest of the game's cast. The first one you'll probably notice is the shady-looking guy over here, Messa Schmidt. He claims to be a German reporter looking to get an interview with Cult, but he gives Raizo and Rennie bad vibes.
あんたにもわかるだろう。この船に使われている技術の凄さ。
Over at the bar is Maria Helsing, who reveals herself as the contact who got us our rooms on this historic voyage. She doesn't know exactly what our deal is, but she does seem cool with us. Odd to hear from a Helsing to a Drac.
そうそう。私はさってここでディナーショーを開くの。ルームサービスなんか取らないで、ぜひ来てくださいね。
それは楽しみだ。ではまた後ほど。
Over on the left, Raizo strikes up a conversation with Mazzo Verasconi, an Italian airship engineer, who's super excited to be riding on such a remarkable piece of machinery.
私はマッツォ・ベラスコーニ、イタリアの飛行機会社の技術屋です。
The Italian and German characters in D&D are a bit funny. Since they're all meant to be on the more sympathetic side, they've all got some moment where they're like, yeah man, imperialism sucks. I hate the Nazi party. Such is with the case of Richard Strasser and his daughter Karen over on the right.
だって私たち空に浮いてるのよ。旅行バトだわ。本物なのね。
Karen and Rennie hit it up with each other pretty quick, and she mentions that her dad initially pushed back on her desire to go out and see the world, but weirdly agreed pretty quick to let her board the ship with him.
君は今の我が国をどう思うかね。
今の我が国ってドイツのことですか？
ああ、もっとも君の国も大して変わらない状況だろうが。
Richelt himself, voiced in the unforgettable deep tones of the late great Unsho Ichizuka, in what actually seems to be his very first video game role, seems like a pretty level-headed and kind dude. The final person we meet in this lounge scene is Elwyn Gluntz, a very feminine young attendant. Elwyn technically gets things to do, but I somehow missed all of them in my playthrough. So all we're really going to be seeing Elwyn do is stand around here and have awkward conversations with Raizo. Once we've talked up all the guests, the captain makes his appearance and announces the ship's path for a round trip around Germany. Colt himself, however, is still a no-show. Raizo and Rennie split up, and you kinda just spend the next half hour wandering around trying to hit random event flags. You can find this map of the Lorelei, but it's not very useful considering the scale of the explorable area is smaller than the average age of Mist. I think the most important scene that happens in this period is Maria mentioning to Raizo that she's been looking out the window, and wherever the ship's going, it's not Germany. They've been soaring over open water for hours. Eventually, Yume rings Raizo up to warn him about some commotion going on with the German ground troops, and he decides to look for a passenger list. Once he finds out it's in Elwyn's room, the guy blocking the lower area of the Lorelei inexplicably vanishes, making it pretty easy for us to just walk on through and bug the captain to let us meet Colt. And sure enough, that's actually all Raizo ends up having to do. Just knock on the door a few times and he gives, telling Raizo to come back when night falls. What follows is perhaps some of the stupidest shit I have ever witnessed in a mystery story. We haven't seen Rennie since we split up. Nobody else has. And on the way back to our room, well, after wandering around to try and trigger whatever random mysterious event flag will let me do this, we poke into Schmidt's room to inquire if he's seen Rennie. The man, of course, says no.
あの女の子か。俺は見てないかな。
そうですか。
Raizo pays no mind to the conspicuously loud noise coming from his bathroom. Once Raizo makes it back to his room, he gets a call from Yume, once again warning him about uneasy activity among the German army, as well as some newly detected time portal signatures, one that appeared already, and one big one that's making its way here as we speak. Raizo then receives a threatening letter from the one who claims to have kidnapped Reni, telling him to hand Colt over if he wants to see her safe. Raizo, being the master detective he is, completely ignores this and goes over to his interview with Colt, where, man, it feels like the game's barely gone anywhere, and in this scene they just spill all the beans immediately. Spoilers, I guess? I can't get over this shot of the Lorelei flying up over the letterboxing. As the gang gathers up, it looks like all three of the old guys behind the Lorelei's construction were in on this grand plan together, right from the start. And what that plan would be, you might ask? To combat the evil plans of Nacht, a shadowy think tank who put Colt to work on the secret project Goriate, a large-scale planetary modification device. It was good at its job. Too good. This thing was strong enough it could rip the Earth apart. Colt made a decision to send it back in time and figure out a way to demolish it, but he slipped up in his calculations and set it to appear this year, in 1939, 3,000 meters under the sea. There was only one solution to destroying Goriate. The man needed a railgun. To realize his railgun dream, Colt traveled further back in time and became close friends with Strasser, agreeing to build the Lorelei in return for aid constructing his Instagibber. Before discussions progress any further, the old men decide it'd be smart to try and actually find and rescue Reni, so Raizo sets off, spotting and knocking out a German army tattletale in the process.
どこにでも裏切る奴はいるものだ。ドイツにバレちまったかな。
He then passes by Elwin, who mentions Schmidt making some suspicious requests for room service in the middle of the night, despite already eating lunch just 2 hours earlier. Raizo does not pursue this. He goes to bed. What the f-
ねえ、あなた、早く起きて。
The next morning, Raizo overhears a commotion over from room 5. Deciding to actually follow this one up, he runs in and finds Colt collapsed on the floor. With this and the news from Yume that the German army is making their move, sending a large-scale missile carrier to blast them out of the sky, Raizo finally decides to actually use his vampire powers. Just after getting permission from Yume to sink his teeth into a young woman's neck, since as mentioned, it hasn't really been possible to get enough energy through non-neck related means.
血を吸いたい一心で無理やりこじつけてない？
頼む、桐姫様。
わかったわ。工事局への報告からは眠っておくから。
サンキュー。
Here you actually get a bit of a choice over whose neck you bite into. Sort of. If you visit Maria first, you get one of the wilder scenes in the game.
しまった。なんとかその気にさせないと。マリアさん、アメリカですよ。アメリカ。
でも。
世界のショービジネスの中心。華麗な舞台。映画も盛んだ。音楽デビューってことになったらどうします？劇場に押し寄せた観客はみんなマリアさんの美しさにうっとりする。
そうよね。一度しかない人生、試してみる価値あるわよね。もしかして私の血を吸いに来たの？
ダメですか？
やっぱり首に噛みつくんでしょ。
そりゃまあ。
ダメ、私痛いのダメなのよ。他の人にして。
マリアさん。
So we're left with just Karen as our candidate. I think you can get Elwyn as an option if you do things. Raizo can find out that she's secretly disguised as a man in order to get her job on the ship and support her family, but I missed whatever conditions make this scene accessible, so it's just Karen here. With his blood gauge filled up, Raizo is able to see into the past and figure out that... Yeah, of course it was Schmidt. How did you not guess it was Schmidt? This is your job, Raizo, come on! Even when you guess that Rennie is locked in Schmidt's bathroom, Raizo's second and last use of his vampiric abilities is to open a bathroom door. Also, they do not explain what this purple floating halo thing is or why it just smashes itself apart. I guess it's a psychic power dampener? I don't know. With Rennie rescued, she finally gets to reunite with her dad, but things outside the Lorelei are starting to heat up. The German armies found us, and they're gearing up to fire some missiles our way. With the time of the Goriate's arrival ticking ever closer, and things looking dim, Colt reveals that the Lorelei itself is, in fact, the railgun, and the plan is to use the ship to blow the Doomsday device to Kingdom Come. So wait, you constructed a high-tech Doomsday device to destroy another high-tech Doomsday okay. Our newly raised hopes get dampened when someone sabotages the Lorelei's power, leaving it without enough to fire off its signature weapon, either to protect itself or to demolish our ultimate target. Kitty Yume comes in with the save, our ships carrying 3 backup batteries that happen to be compatible with the mechanisms used by the Lorelei's weaponry, but things are getting a bit too hot for her to dock and deliver them. The good news is, she doesn't have to.
行きます。
Rennie can teleport. Well, only about up to 50 meters. Still, it provides an easy solution. After flying close enough for Rennie to warp back and forth collecting the 3 batteries, she and Raizo both take up positions, Rennie loading the batteries for the railgun like shells, and Raizo manning the targeting computer and firing mechanism. It's time for the epic climax? As Raizo climbs up into the railgun chamber, hidden by the blimp's fake balloon, Schmidt gives some parting words and dives out with a jetpack.
遅かったね、鳴神君。これでこの船はただのでかい飛行船になってしまったね。そろそろ迎えが来る時間だ。この船の始末はドイツ軍にお任せするようにして。私は失礼させた。
In Dee Dee's final attempt at pretending to have gameplay, we get these incredible CG cutscenes building up to destroying 2 enemy projectiles heading our way. First, the German army's missile, and then, once Weisan Nacht's immense megaship warps in, it and Schmidt's annoying little fighter jet. Each time Raizo and Rennie fire the gun, you first control Rennie loading in the shell, choosing between one of 10 battery chambers to load into, though only 3 of them work. If you pick the wrong one, there's no consequences. Raizo's just like, oh, you missed that one. Try another! After that, you just wait for the targeting computer to zero in and press the circle button. Again, no real pressure. You can't die here.
もらった 残りは一発
Finally, the Goriate appears, and we blast that thing to bits. With our job completed, the bad guys beaten, and the passengers and crew of the Lorelei off to a peaceful life in America, Colt asks Raizo to take his daughter back to the future, but she chooses to stay here with her dad and, I guess, her girlfriend. Nobody has any particular objections to this. Everyone says their goodbyes, and Raizo and Hime head on home. After a disk swap back to Disc 1 to load the ending, Raizo and Hime are back chilling at the office, once again complaining about their lack of money or employment. Suddenly, a legal representative pays them a visit, delivering their millions of yen in stocks for the world-famous Draval Toys Products Company, including a letter from Rennie telling us how grand everyone's lives were after their move over to the States. Not only did she fix Raizo and Hime's money problems forever, she even included a funny little floating toy Lorelei. The end. But wait, what about Schmidt and Wolf?
なあウルフ、迎えはいつ来るんだろうな。
I don't even know, man. DD is kind of an indescribable game. It very much lives on the vibes of being a bizarre early CG FMV adventure game. And within that, it's got some funny scenes. It's extremely short, only about an hour and a half long, and it's much easier to get through than some of System Satcom's other games. It's also much uglier. Like, you know, I can't say Lunacy looks great, but it definitely looks more put together than this. Lunacy also has things closer to puzzles, and more of an actual mystery. DD doesn't really have any of these things. If Alice in Cyberland felt like a PS1 adventure game with big interesting ideas let down by a lack of time and resources, Space-Time Detective DD Dracula Detective feels like a game that willed itself into existence despite having extremely few ideas of how to write a mystery story or construct a game, period. I do mostly enjoy it though. Again, it's very short. This is part of why it doesn't really feel like anything coherent happens, but it does mean it's also over way before it can start to get annoying or drag too much. And I got at least a handful of memorable scenes and laughs out of it, so hey, feels worth it to me. DD did get a second game some years later, a prequel in fact, but it's a very different kind of game where you don't get any of the same clunky CG, so it almost feels a little pointless. Maybe we'll check out DD2 someday, but for now, the adventures of our favorite Dracula detective end here. If you enjoyed the video, I've got a Patreon. See you sometime.